So, welcome to everybody who tuned in, and welcome to everybody who will this once we afterwards upload it on YouTube and we'll watch the replay. First of all, I'm very happy that everybody tuned in live. I'm very happy that hopefully there will be a lot of people who will watch this afterwards. Warm welcome from my side. I did not come alone to show you the Smoobu Dynamic Pricing today, but I am joined by my colleague Sanjeev, who you can also see here in the screen, who is our product manager for any new customer-facing features. And he will also assist me during the webinar. We'll show you through the product how to set up the dynamic pricing and so on and so forth. A little disclaimer for everyone. I do apologize. We're not 100% sure if you might or might not hear it. There is some construction noise currently in our office. So if you do hear some drilling, that's coming from my end of the webinar. Please do apologize. We couldn't stop them from doing it, but I think everything will be fine. We're trying our best to keep this as good as we can. Now, let's jump in. So I've briefly introduced Sanjeev, who will be joining me as a product manager at Smoobu and will later walk you through as well. Now, what are we going to talk about today? We will give you an overview about general dynamic pricing tools, why there might be use case for you as a host to use dynamic pricing tools. What does it do? What is the general setup of it? We will show you a bit more the intricacies of our own dynamic pricing tool that we now launched. Afterwards, Sanjeev will show you in details what to do in your Smoobu account in case you want to set it up. As said before, this webinar is being recorded, so you can also watch it afterwards to get the step-by-step decisions. We will have time for Q&A. We do have a little surprise and a little interactive part in the end as well. In general, I will have a view on the chat as much as I can when I'm not talking. So while Sanjeev shows the product, I will have an eye on the chat to try to answer and catch any live questions that might arrive. There are also colleagues that try to answer as many questions as possible in the chat while they arrive from our team. In general, I think that's it, and to jump in. Now, the little part of explaining ways to interact. You can all see on your right-hand side the little different icons that you can see. So you do have the chat function, which are those little boxes on top where you can interact in the chat, push messages, anything that we can see. And I see the first nice comment. Thank you a lot, Allure Athens Urban Suites. You guys are great and have a very good platform. Thank you very much. So that's the part where you can engage in the Q&A and have any questions. There are also, if you want to, because there might be direction in the general chat window, one button below that, so the little box with a question mark on it, is where you can submit questions as well, and they will be pinned, and you can also upvote them. So this also makes it a bit easier for us in the end to sort through any questions. We'll try to look at both, but that being said, there is also the third button it is a button for polls, meaning that if you see it, and we will have a couple of polls where you can, and we want your votes and opinions, you can also do that there, and we'll see the outcome in the end together. Moving on. Why use dynamic pricing in your vacation rental business? Now, before we jump in, as promised, there is a little poll. So you find this little icon that you see on the slide on the bottom right side. You can also see it in your buttons on the left where you have the chat option. There is a little poll. The question is rather easy. Have you ever used a dynamic pricing tool? Yes, I currently have. Yes, but I don't use it anymore. And no, I have never used one. Very excited to see everyone's results. We'll give a couple of seconds so you guys can find the poll and also answer. Currently at 7 votes. Good. So the first couple of votes are in. We have currently a clear underlying or theme. No, I have never used a dynamic pricing tool before is leading with 55% of people who answered the poll, quickly followed by current users of a or any dynamic pricing tool. So we do see a clear, and we have a couple of users who use it before but don't use it anymore. So we have a clear tendency towards people who are currently not using a dynamic pricing tool. Then this webinar might be actually very well suited for you to get an overview and decide if you want to try it out or not. And it's a very good point in the chat already. Please make a poll after this one for the people who have it, if they have seen better returns on generally using a pricing tool. Question to our marketing team, can we do that live now or do we have to do it afterwards? If so, let us know. We'll try to do it live, otherwise we will follow up. Very good point. Now, what is dynamic pricing for vacation rentals in general? And also why you might or should use it as a host. The general outline of a dynamic pricing tool. There are several things that you can think about in case you would or should want to use it. So what it is in general, dynamic pricing is an option to change your prices or your average daily rates to, in the end, take the outcome of either increasing your revenue by higher prices than you would normally charge, or increasing your occupancy by setting smarter rules and or tackling certain demand gaps with lower prices at certain points so you can get the occupancy in instead of having it not booked at all. How does that work? So dynamic pricing, and I'm not specifically talking about Smoobu now, but in general, dynamic pricing tools are usually either AI powered or machine learning powered. They run on models that do an analysis on a lot of different factors. They take into account, are there seasonal effects in the area where you're renting out? How is the demand developing in the general area or countries you're renting out, but also the hyper local areas? How is the listing availability? How is your listing availability? How are you booked out? But also, how is the listing availability in the hyper local area, but also more in the local areas, and also in the general market trend in the general countries? Time is a factor. How far out are you booked out? Is there a certain urgency to fill availability and occupancy? What are the minimum prices and the maximum prices you would want and need to achieve in or your vacation? What are certain restrictions that you think? What are the different amenities that also your vacation rental might have? So all of these factors, and there I'll come to the amount of data points that are taken into account, to in the end give you the best possible recommendation on what to do without you having to do that extensive analysis. Now, and that is in the end the dynamic and smart prices that in the end come out to give you the opportunity to price your vacation rental nights better. Now, what is Smoobu Dynamic Pricing? You ask. So we're going to have a quick look on the general facts before Sanjeev walks us through the. Now, Smoobu Dynamic Pricing. What do we do here? What do we want to achieve? What do we want to offer to you as hosts? So Smoobu Dynamic Pricing is as an underlying model that runs on data that we internally have on the Smoobu platform from our hosts that we can analyze, but also we're getting external data as well to basically have a bigger model that we can run and optimize prices on. So we have around 2 billion data points that are being analyzed all the time to achieve the best possible prices in the areas we offer, so more or less around the globe. And that means there is an automated analysis of those data points to assess the best market prices. What is Smoobu Dynamic Pricing? For us, it's a simple and intuitive tool. It is very much an entry-level solution at this point. It's easy to set up and it's fast to adopt. So you don't have to opt for an external provider like any other smart pricing tool that is a different service where you have to create an account that you have to connect. Yes, there are also several of our very well-valued partners that are in the market that you can connect with Smoobu. Smoobu Dynamic Pricing solution at this point is an entry level. It's if you want to try out those dynamic pricing solutions, it has a very base set offering to be this entry. It is not meant to compete with the bigger brand names out there that offer a lot of different options on top, where you have different functionalities, more revenue management opportunities, and so on and so forth. It is, in essence, and in line with our philosophy on product development at Smoobu, a simple solution. For now, we'll come to the end of the webinar so far. It gives you a recommendation for a price that you can choose and try to optimize revenue and occupancy. Now, how does it work? Smoobu Dynamic Pricing allows you to take and stay in control, as you do with all the Smoobu tools. You can decide on minimum, maximum prices that you would want your vacation rental to be priced upon. You can use the suggestions that Smoobu gives you, but you can also override as you see fit, either on specific dates or in general. And this combined approach is basically to increase your revenue streams and your occupancy. The database insights plus your experience should increase your profits in the long run. And why am I emphasizing the combination of the both, right? The database insights via the tool and your experience. As all of you know, vacation rentals are a super individual business, or can be. So you know your vacation rental best. And there is very few instances, I want to say, where vacation rentals are 100% identical or comparable. So yes, there are literal billions of data points that the model can compare and give advice upon how you should price your vacation rental. But there might be tiny nuances that only you as an owner or as a manager know, that leaves you to know either I should at certain dates up price a bit more or down price a bit more, adjust teeny tiny things where your experience might also be beneficial. And that might be that you know that the one vacation rental you're looking at has the best view in town on the lake where it's situated. That the model kind of knows it from the location, but that it's the best view in town, it will know, for example. And there are all those teeny tiny things that in the end, the combination of the both will lead to the best results. That is what we also know and what we see. In general, the AI tool or Smoobu Dynamic Pricing is a very good start to also get recommendations and data points on how you also should look at pricing over time and at different points of the year. And now, for anyone who's tired of my voice and me telling a lot of stuff, I can hand over to Sanjeev, who will set up Smoobu Dynamic Pricing for us and walk us through the bit.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Yannick, for the introduction. So far we have seen how Smoobu Dynamic Pricing works from a more theoretical perspective. Now let's have a live demo, and I will take you across the solution to show you how you can basically set up Smoobu Dynamic Pricing as a Smoobu user, and we will do this together live now. And we have basically three steps to follow in order to get there. So we have the first step, which is prepare, where we will be basically preparing our listings and feeding the right information onto Smoobu so that our underlying model gets as much as information as possible and will be able to calculate the prices as accordingly for our listings. And then the second step would be to activate. Here, you can get to choose which listing you can activate, and you can also test and see different locations. Like, for example, if you have a listing in Germany and then another listing in Spain. So you can also see how our model predicts prices based on local events and the geography and the demand in two different regions. So Smoobu Dynamic Pricing gives you the freedom to basically activate only the units you want and not every other unit on your Smoobu app. And the last step is to tailor. Here, you already start receiving prices from our model, and then we give you the freedom to basically add more information as and when you see fit, so that you will be able to get even better price recommendations. And you will also have the option to tailor the prices according to how you see as fit, depending on seasonality, demand, bookings, and so on. So now let's get started, and I'll take you right across the demo. Okay, so now I'll be sharing my screen. And you can see the homepage in a few seconds. Okay, so can everyone see the homepage? Yannick, yes?
Yes.
Perfect. So as you can see, we have a tiny banner here, which also announces the release of this new feature. We have it Smoobu. So all you need to do is click on Learn More here, and then you're already on the landing page for this particular feature. You can also access this feature through our new menu bar. It's located under configuration, and under configuration, you have the dynamic pricing as part of one of the options in the sub menu. So yeah, now that we are on the Smoobu Dynamic Pricing feature page, as you can see, we have a small introduction to what is Smoobu Dynamic Pricing, how it works, how you can connect to it as a user, just a small user guide. We also have a detailed extensive guide here in the link below, and also a short description of the trial. We offer a 30-day trial and also how much it costs. So let's get started. As you can see here, we have this subsection called Manage Pricing, and we have two menus here. One is the connection status, and the other one, accommodation settings. So we will first go to the accommodation settings tab. And then, as you can see here, we have a few things to sort out and list. So let's get started with general settings. So general settings are basically settings which apply to all of your listings in the account. So basically, you in Smoobu can set up a common currency in which you would like to show your prices and also send them to the portals, like, for example, booking.com, Airbnb, or your own website builder. So here I will be choosing Euro for now as the common currency for all of my Smoobu listings. This particularly has to be applied in case you have rentals in countries where you have two different currencies, then you have to end up choosing one common currency to show how you would want to list your prices. And now, as you see here, in property specific, the dropdown gives me a list of all the properties which I have in my Smoobu account. So in my case, I have Casa Berlin and then Villa Bali. Let's just choose Casa Berlin for now. And as I choose Casa Berlin, you can see here the dropdown. When I click on it, it opens up the address form. And I have just entered basically an address in Berlin. And as a user, you're supposed to enter the address here. It's a normal text field. And as you enter your address, our coordinates are calculated automatically. But then we would request you to double check to make sure that the latitude and the longitude, the coordinates, are calculated correctly. And how do we do that? So you just go to Google Maps, and then basically I choose the same address, what I've mentioned here, right? More or less around the same location. And as you can see here, I've basically already typed in the location and I have it live. And once I right click on my address, you see the coordinates. Right. For example, here it reads 52.54314, comma 13.41401. And once you verify that this is the correct coordinates, you can go down and then enter the number of rooms and beds. So here you enter the maximum number of guests and the bathrooms and the bedrooms which you have on your listing. And going down, we have the amenities. So amenities are basically features, or let's say luxuries, which you offer in your listing for your guests. It could be ranging from anything as basic as Wi-Fi or soap and toilet paper to something super luxurious like a jacuzzi or a fitness center. So basically, your job is to list all the amenities you have on your listing here so that you will be able to give our system as much info as possible so that we can get you the right prices. And then finally, we have here the default prices where you will be able to set certain boundaries on what you would like your listing to be listed at, what price. So, for example, minimum price is mandatory. We need this in order to calculate prices. And minimum price is the bare minimum price below which you would never price your listing. For example, here I put the number of as 20 euro. So below 20 euro, I would never want my listing to be listed and be available at in any portal for any booking. Similarly, you have the maximum price. This is more of an option because we understand that probably this threshold wouldn't make a lot of sense. So, but anyway, we offer it as an option so that you will be also able to set up a maximum price as and when you see fit. We also have the base price. I will be coming back to this in a bit. So once we have filled out all of this information as part of managed pricing, I will be clicking on save property data. And once I click on this, information will be basically sent to our model so that it can be calculating the right prices on the background. So now I move back to the connection status page. And here, as you can see here, we have the two listings and the statuses. It says dynamic pricing is disabled and dynamic pricing is disabled for both properties. So now, since I've entered all the information, what I deem as necessary, I choose to activate this property for Casa Berlin. And I just switch on this toggle. Once I switch on this toggle, as you can see, there's a small notification on the right-hand side which says dynamic pricing is activated. So what do I do next? Just a small disclaimer here. In my case, we got the connected status as soon as we connected because I had already configured my address and I had set up my property earlier before the demo. But in your case, when you do it the first time, we will need around 20 to 30 minutes in order to basically calculate the data, compute your right prices, and then send it back so that you will be able to actually connect your listings and then get the right prices. Thank you, Yannick, for the disclaimer signpost. So, yeah, do we have any questions until now? I see.
We have some that we can answer in the context of looking at the data in a second.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Then I think we should go ahead. So once I have activated my listing, I move to the pricing tab. And as you can see here, it's located on the sub menu. And once I have activated dynamic pricing, you can see that clearly on the pricing menu. We have a chain link symbol, which denotes that this particular listing is connected to the dynamic pricing solution. And as you can see here, the prices have already been updated for basically the next 1.5 years. And yeah, now you might have a few questions or you might have a few speculations. Okay, so I see the prices. Is there something I can do further? Is there something I can optimize further so that I can get the best value out of this tool and also be happy with my prices? So we have two things what we can do here. The first step, as you might remember, on the pricing calendar, you have the complete freedom to always set up the prices as and when you seem fit. Like, for example, the 5th of April is just 2 days away. And I know that my listing will probably be able to go for a much higher price. So I will be able to manually update this listing as you do before on the pricing menu. And what will happen is that this particular data point, which you listed here, will be sent back to our solution. And at the same time, it will also be reflected on the pricing calendar here. And as you can see, it's updated and it's already reflecting on Smoobu. And this price will also be reflected on the connected portals you have soon enough. So we have manually changed the price. But what if, for example, tomorrow you discover that you haven't got a booking yet and you prefer using the AI driven price, the price from our Smoobu Dynamic Pricing? In that case, no worries. As you can see, we have this tiny refresh button here. You just click on it and it will revert the prices back to the prices which were suggested by the solution. And as you can see here, it has automatically switched back and you have the price which was suggested by the solution, which was 57 euros. So this is step one, in which you can do as part of tailoring. And then step two, as we can imagine, there was this base price customization, which I promised I'll be coming back later. So now we are here. So basically, before we even start to like tinker with this, let's understand what is base price. So base price is basically the average price at which you would want your listing to be priced at. On an average day, regardless of the season, the day, is it whether a weekend or weekday, what is the roughly the average price you would probably want your listing to be listed at? It need not be completely um, based on data. It could also be a gut feeling. But then, in order to help you and make life easier for you, we also have two options here. So the first option is data driven, and as you can see here, data driven gives you three options. Data driven basically leverages real time market data to optimize your pricing. And here you have three options: conservative, recommended, and aggressive. And conservative is optimized for higher occupancy. Well, so we suggest that for hosts who are focused on getting higher occupancy rates. And recommended balances basically occupancy as well as profitability and revenue. And aggressive, on the other side, is basically for hosts who want to optimize for a higher revenue. So I, as a host, I can choose to be within the data-driven mode or the rule-based mode. And rule-based pricing is basically for users who want to prioritize control. So here you can set your ideal price for your listing, which we can use in order to adjust for daily demand. So as a host, for example, I would want to go for a more aggressive mode of pricing. So I choose 89 as my base price. And now this will also be used in order to compute my prices better. So that's it. Think this basically ends the demo. And
We have some questions. Can you leave it on for 1 second? Because we
yeah,
have one question that immediately fits the bill from
mhm.
Harry. Just as a feedback or a question, for a particular day or date, can the synchronize button be removed? AKA, once the base price field in blue is manually updated, it should automatically apply the revised pricing.
Yeah. As I understand this question, Hari, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you mean that you want to remove the updated pricing once it's manually updated? Is that what this means, Yannick? Maybe you can help me understand because it's not super clear for me what it means
I'm, check
here.
I'm checking. I'm also not 100% sure. And we come back to you, Harvey, afterwards. Maybe I see that a couple of colleagues are also in the chat that can have a closer look for Harry in the meantime. We also do have other questions. One would be, and that one I like, it would be helpful to understand how locally sensitive the data set is. For example, does it take into account local holidays, events, academic terms, if you're in a university town or similar, concerts, eclipses, as it was in the US?
Yes, that's right. So Smoobu Dynamic Pricing, as Yannick was saying earlier, calculates the optimal pricing based on local demand. So basically, if there are any local events like concerts, conferences, any yeah, sporting events, those also holidays. It could be public holidays or just religious holidays, and also other occupancy rates which are based around your listing. Like for example, if a couple of Airbnbs next to your listing is having a good occupancy rate, that means that we can also price your listing better. So it also takes into account all of this information which affect demand in your area in order to calculate the right price.
I hope that helps. We have another question that is related from Larry. We might have to follow up on this, Larry, but maybe you know, Sanjeev, what is the definition of the size of the hyper and local areas? I would
So
assume.
yeah, Larry, when you say hyper, I think you mean a hyper localized place, like for example, a suburb in a particular city, right? So as from our model basically calculates listings based on a radius of about 5 kilometers, which are around your listing. That is the base which we have in order to calculate the prices. We see listings around a radius of 5 kilometers. What is the booking history with them? What are the prices they are charging? And also how basically the local events and the demand has been affected with those listings. And when you say local area, I believe you mean the city or more or less the greater area or the greater suburb. So we also consider that as part of the zip code. So basically, we use the zip code in order to localize on areas.
Then there is another related one. Is there a minimum volume of bookings to inform the model? Larry is asking as well.
Yeah, good question, Larry. So as Yannick was saying earlier, we built this tool to make sure that it's simple and it's something which even new users who are joining Smoobu, like new hosts who want to just use this tool and make their lives easier by pricing it accordingly, easily, can do this. So we do not need any history of bookings from you in order to calculate the right prices, but then we also take into account the booking history. So the moment you connect Smoobu Dynamic Pricing, we grab the history of bookings which you have had in the last 1.5 2 years in order to calculate your prices. So basically, just like any other AI model, the more data you have, the better, but it's not necessary. So we do not need a mandatory minimum volume of bookings, but the more you have, the better. But that also means that the longer you stay on Smoobu, the better prices you get.
And it obviously that is, I mean, it's a very good question. It also, that's the beauty of the dynamic pricing in the end, right? That it also takes a lot of data points
Mm-hmm.
around you to also give you good feedback. Another question from David: would be helpful to understand the interaction with linked platforms variable pricing, meaning how does, I would assume, David, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're talking about any discounts or variable pricing on any OTAs that you've linked. How does that influence, for my account, the dynamic pricing that I may or may not set?
Yeah, David, so answering your question, so basically, as we grab the history of bookings, Smoobu Dynamic Pricing also keeps into account the pricing criteria which is present in different portals. But then, if you're talking about a particular platform, I think I will not be able to talk confirm about that right now, and we need to know a bit more details to tell you if this is possible with a particular platform or a particular portal.
Next one, good one from Allure Athens Urban Suites. Will these prices be changing periodically, or do we, once this is set, or we do this once and it's set, and then these prices will not change for 1 year period? How is it done? What's the intervals that it
Mhm.
changes?
Yeah. So as the name says, it's dynamically priced. So these prices are supposed to and will be changing as per the events and the seasonality and the demand in your locality. So they will not be staying fixed unless we do not see a great impact in your locality for the extended period of time.
But to add to this, why also dynamic pricing can be a powerful tool, it does react, especially if you have certain events happening that might come out of the sudden. If the perfect example for dynamic pricing the last couple of years was always Taylor Swift,
Mm-hmm.
where, or bigger concerts, when out of the sudden there is a change in Taylor, or for people who prefer more, Metallica changes their tour locations and out of the sudden announce, hey, there is going to be an additional concert in my beautiful hometown of Niederkassel. The moment that that's announced, probably price for vacation rentals will go up. So it also helps you to dynamically get the info without you potentially knowing it. But other
That's
than
right.
that, if the parameters don't change, the prices stay the same as they should.
That's right. Exactly, Yannick. So based on news and what is going on, basically how the demand and supply changes, we will be doing optimal real-time pricing for basically each night.
Now we have two more questions. I'll briefly brush over you, Claudio. Apologies. Does the system adjust also the minimum number of nights each day? It does not now, but we'll come to that in a second.
Mhm.
There is a last question from Larry. How much premium does the algorithm add in determining the maximum price? For example, plus €1, plus €50.
Yeah. So Larry, the premium depends on actually the amenities you add. So the more amenities you have in your listing, like for example, as we were talking about it a bit earlier, so if you have more amount of amenities and more posh ones, like for example, if you have yeah, like a jacuzzi or a sauna or even a freezer that or a smart TV, that makes it more premium and posh than other listings in your surrounding area. So depending on that, we basically automatically compute what is the extra premium we need to add to your listing so that it can appear more premium and be priced accordingly, the right way, when compared to other listings.
Perfect. Now, looking at the time, and we have no more questions right now, could you go back to the slide, Sanjeev, and we go to our slightly interactive last part of the webinar?
Yeah. Sharing my screen in a second. Yeah.
Now,
Oops.
as
Sorry.
mentioned before, don't worry. As mentioned before, the current version of the dynamic pricing tool, as released, is a very basic entry model, and it's not comparable with bigger things out there. And also, Claudio brought a good point up. How can I deal with minimum nights? Are there more opportunities to use that dynamic pricing or adjust it to the needs and further optimize it? As we thrive for providing you all the most value we can do, so bringing more value to you as our hosts, we have it slightly interactive on what is supposed to come next. So we first now released dynamic pricing in the sense that we said, okay, we have the basic version that we want to ship out there and actually give to our hosts so they can use this entry-level solution if they want to. Now, for the next steps, and again, unfortunately, I think that's the problem, is that it's a bit mirrored now. We fix that until the next one. Big disclaimer, that is not a roadmap. That is not anything that will happen in the next month. But for our planning sessions and also our understanding, we want your opinion. And I have brought feedback points from users that were already submitted over the test phase in the last couple of weeks from about our dynamic pricing and potential next functions. Now, there will be 2 more polls in the polling section for everyone, and awesome functionality with the balloons now from Crowdcast, which will ask you what would be your number 1 wish priority that you would want to see next as a functionality in Smoobu Dynamic Pricing, and the second poll will ask what would be the second most wanted for you. Now, we have different options. We have number 1, set minimum nights that will take into account the dynamic pricing. What are minimum nights that need to be reached in order to achieve a certain price? Also, with this, tackle so-called orphan gaps. If there are some nights that you usually wouldn't be able to book, is there a certain orphan gap in between 2 longer stays that you would want to fill? Is there a certain price for it? So basically play around with the minimum nights, the minimum length of stay that you would want to connect to your dynamic pricing. Second option, or second feature request, far out pricing. Change the pricing model for dates that are in the far future. For example, I either want to, any date that is a year out, I would want a premium on this because I try. I know that usually the closer I get to the dates, I might want to optimize the occupancy, but why not try? If I have a year's time to fill that slot, why not try to push the ADRs? The same time, you could also say in a far out pricing, I want the security and the safety of having booked this with certain cancellation policies. So I might also decide to, if it's a year out, you get a big discount. And this would basically mean the far out pricing would help you further optimize your revenue strategy as you see fit. As for option number 3, setting seasonal minimum prices, meaning that now you set one minimum price that is given throughout the year, but you might see that you would want to set differences across season. High season, low season, do I want to apply different minimum prices? Do I want to play around with this? Pretty straightforward. Day of the week prices. Do I want to price differently for different types of stays or different stays throughout the week? Do I want to price someone who, business travelers that would want to book Tuesday to Thursday differently than people who book traditional Saturday to Saturday or just over the weekend. So different prices for days of the week to even further enhance your revenue management strategy. And last but not least, the possibility to simultaneously use different dynamic pricing tools at the same time if you would want to do so. Now, it's poll time. And exactly, we do see that a couple of you already voted. The polls are live. Which update would you like to see first? We have 4 votes in, and also people are starting to vote for the second item they would want to see. Now, before we come back to look at this, David put one comment where we identify an event, for example, which would affect the local pricing. It would be useful to be able to set a minimum price just for those dates. This would allow local sensitivity whilst retaining the advantages of dynamic pricing. This could be defined as seasonal minimum price as a workaround where season would be defined as the date of the event, for example, would be a next step as part of the process. Now, looking at the time as we're a bit over, and I'm trying to see if there's any questions left. Let's have a last look at the poll. We'll also, as this will be on YouTube, you will have the ability to look at this afterwards. And for the marketing team, please also share the results of the polls in the description of YouTube or wherever we can. Or we collect it because we're doing this webinar in all the languages we offer. So meaning there will be more data points that we might also put together for everyone. Which updates would you like to see first? We have the leading votes with 37.5% for seasonal minimum prices, closely followed by day of the week pricing and minimum nights, and 1 vote for far out pricing. Second update that people would want to see, far out pricing, followed by seasonal minimum prices, and 1 for the simultaneous use of it. Now, let me have a look if there is another question. Point from Hari. Is there an option where we are able to see the recommended pricing first in the area of my listing and then select the selected pricing to be applied in a particular month or week to my listing? You're still muted, Sanjeev?
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Yannick? Yes. So, Hari, I was just replying to your comment on text, but yeah, so this is a lovely idea. Yeah, we will be probably doing this also in the future, like where you can basically take in suggested prices from us and apply that to particular months or weeks on your calendar for a particular listing. We don't have this right now, and that's why we offer the option to also adjust manual prices as and when you like. But then thanks for your suggestion. We can consider this also in the future.
We have 2 more comments left, and then I think we're good. Is there a free trial? Yes, there is a free trial. So feel free to use it. And one last question, how often does the tool run checks and update prices?
Yeah, we don't have a defined interval at which the tool goes and checks prices for your particular listing, but then we keep monitoring real time. And as and when there is a slight change in the demand supply parameters, either due to seasonality or local events, or simply because of higher booking rates for your particular listing, the prices get adjusted automatically. So this is something which happens automatically based on the algorithm. and is not defined on a particular interval, like for example, every 6 hours or every day or something of that sort.
But the tool updates itself and looks at it. So if you want to follow up, I think we do have the data on how often it
Yep.
updates.
Mm-hmm.
That, as far as I can see it, concludes the questions, and we are on time. Ale and marketing team, correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you very much, everyone who tuned in. Thank you for the questions. If you have any more, obviously, feel free to reach out to our team. It was a blast. First webinar for our dynamic pricing. Thanks for coming, and have a great rest of the day.